All right, to get us started today, we have some questions we'll just ask the panelists, and for us to sit back and listen. You can engage with them as they respond to these, but we have a couple questions to get us started thinking about this whole engagement marketplace. Okay, first question, what are the key drivers of employee engagement in the marketplace today? And here's the key, what does it differ by industry, education, or size of company? So Ravi, with your enthusiasm and your excitement down at the end of the table, we're going to start with Juline first, okay? All right. Okay, Julie, you want to grab this one?
Sure, absolutely. So, as you may have seen in the video, there were some really key and poignant points there, but what we found with the research that our organization has done, but also what you see out there in the marketplace, that there are three key things that really drive engagement in companies. Number one is pride in your employee, the pride your employees have in the organization. Are they proud to work there? Do they see that the company is involved in the community, that they have some connection to the community? That are they proud of the products and services and the service that you provide? So having that pride allows them to feel good about where they come to work every day, and what are some of the things that the company is doing that's helping to foster that environment in the company. Number two is their relationship with their immediate manager, or immediate supervisor. And I'm sure we've all heard over the years that people don't leave companies, they leave managers. And in this case, when we're talking about engagement, it is 100% true. That what creates that engagement is, does my boss, my immediate boss who I work with every day, do they care about me? Do they care about my development? You know, do they care about me as a person personally? Do they know what's important to me, what motivates me? It may be different for me than it is for Brendon. Do they know that? Do they take the time to know me and provide me with opportunities for development and to grow? That's critical. And the third is, do they have belief in senior leadership? So those who are running the company, do they look to them and really see that there's a clear direction and a strategy, and that they believe that senior leadership is moving the company in the right direction? So, you know, what we see in the marketplace today, and I know the customers that we work with when we talk about engagement too, it's that these, you know, we hear it in our research, but when we have these conversations with our customers, these are such poignant and important issues that they're looking at. So, you know, these are really the three key things from our perspective that are driving engagement in companies. And so when we look at the size of the company, what's interesting is that smaller companies, engagement tends to be higher. Okay, and you can probably guess it's because people individually feel like they have more of an influence on the direction of the company, things that are happening, changes within the company. They feel like they have more of a voice than in, you know, a larger company, maybe a company that is, you know, one of our big enterprise companies here in the Boston area. So we see that engagement in smaller companies also is easier to affect when we're looking at improving engagement, is that it's easier to do that in a smaller work environment. And as it pertains to industry, we haven't seen that. And when you look at the research, it also looks at, regardless of industry, those three foundational things we talked about are true. Still, the management piece, the value to the organization, and the senior leadership is, across industries, it is the same. And that's still what drives people individually within the context of their environment.
You know, a lot of things that Juline said are very important to kind of the engagement level. And I think just because we're in a unique situation where we have a growing population that has all 3 to 4 generations that exist within it. So not only do we get a chance to see companies that we partner with as they grow, they're reaching out to us for a reason, because they need employees and they're consistently growing. But even internally, we got a great perspective because you know, kind of the DNA of us internally and the culture that we build, you know, we get both outlooks that way. So I think the 3 major things that we look at, and I think that are really important, is the employees at all levels. Doesn't matter whether, you know, you're a baby boomer, Gen Y, or, you know, whatever. It is that does the company care about you? And that can come in many different ways. So making sure that your policies and procedures touch on a lot of those different things, and that the management and leadership is actually taking the time to understand what each group or what each individual, what makes them tick and what motivates them. If you don't have that, there's no way that you can build programs around trying to engage those employees. You might roll out unlimited vacation to some that's not important to, whereas a millennial coming through that wants to think independently and is control their own destiny, that might be the winning ticket to getting them through, versus someone that is in there to work long hours, work hard, so they achieve a result, and that's a win for them. The other thing is, in all generations, I think, having the individuals being able to see the freedom in making their own decisions. Now, it said a lot about creativity. Looking at Waters, if you had every new person come in and think that they could reinvent how to push through a manufacturing process, you might have some serious rogue people in the organization. So I think that the freedom to make decisions comes in many different areas. I think teaching someone how to fish one way and being able to give them the rope to make decisions on their own and come to the conclusion on certain problems, is a really strong way to allow people to make their own decisions and feel like they're in control of their own career. Whether it's a brand new salesperson or a brand new machinist coming in the night shift. And I think the third thing that's really, really important, that it's an ingredient of every team or a successful team that we have seen, is people feeling like they're part of a winning team. If there isn't a general message or a cause or something that people are working towards, you can go through a slump, but as long as you're going through a slump with people that care about you and your success, and you care about them, they feel like you're in it together, and you can kind of come out of that. So I feel like building a culture and a mentality that you're part of a winning team and you can do anything together, that can translate into success through bumps in the road or not. So,
all right, thank you, Ravi.
So, most of the things what they have said, I agree with, but I cannot put them in a box. And I'm an executive coach, and I cannot accept that it is a generality in every industry and every situation. So let's take industry for example, and let me put it this way, that if you're in a manufacturing and if you're a small shop, what kind of creativity are you really encouraging? So it becomes a choice that the management have to make. On the other hand, if you're in a software design and you're trying to solve the big pictures of your customer, it is absolutely essential to engage them together to come up with a solution. So industry matters. In my opinion, industry matters as to how much you can engage them. And let me go to the manufacturing side. And yes, your equipment has become, I'm an engineer, so I know, I've been a manufacturer. There's a general word that the manufacturing jobs are not sexy. Excuse my using words, but that's what has been preached with different people. How do you engage these people to even come to the table and feel that there is something exciting about it? So that's the starting point. So it is very, very much important for you to understand that each industry will have to customize their way of engaging people, and their framework will be different. If you're in insurance, there's a different as compared to if you're in a software design as compared to manufacturing. So I think I cannot put them in one box when it comes to industry. The second part is education. In my personal opinion, I'm not sure it matters. I'm more about attitude and aptitude. If they have the right attitude and right aptitude, you can groom them, you can mentor them, you can take them to the next level. And that's something that a lot of times you look at the resume, you look at their disc and all those things. Do you really test them for their attitude and aptitude, or do you only know when they come in? So that's one part that I don't care about the education part, even though I would like to have the basic qualification, but rest all, it doesn't matter, at least as far as I'm concerned. The third part is the size of the leadership, the size of the company. And I'm going to defer with you on that particular point. We have worked with companies that are small as $2 million to as high as $150 million companies as executive coaches. in the small company, there could be a very toxic behavior at the top. And you've seen that many times, my way or highway. So how can you motivate anyone? How can you energize someone? How can you do that engagement when you have that kind of behavior? They may be a charismatic leader, hence people get engaged. But they also burn out people. They start taking on, I've seen many executives in small companies chasing shiny objects. When you start chasing shiny objects, how do you manage your time? And what are you doing with your time, and what are you doing with the time of your other employees? You're burning them out. So I cannot accept the fact that small companies are better than the bigger, and it could happen even in a big company. So company size, I wouldn't give them so much thing as the executive types. And executive leadership makes all the difference when it comes to the size of the company. How do they plan? How do they plan their own time? How do they plan the strategy? So I'm going to leave there to say that the size of the company, in my opinion, really doesn't really matter, but the type of leader matters.
So is that what you're saying is the key employee engagement is the leadership of the organization?
Absolutely, it has to start from the top.
Yep.
And really from the CEO.
Yep.
And if that culture is not, there is no commitment to it from the CEO level and the next layer, you really can't take it to the next level.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So that's what.
All right, so let's take a look at another question then to segue off this. Are there tools that you would recommend companies use to create a more engaged culture? Okay. And Brendon, why don't we start with you on this one?
Sure. So, an engaged culture, it's, you can, to what Ravi said, you can have a great leader that can, build a game plan and push it down. But if you don't have feedback based on that great leader about the changing environments or what's happening, and you're not listening to that feedback as an organization, you can really start to split the ship, and you have the masses going one direction and the game plan going another. So I think that really listening to survey feedback and getting in touch with what's important to the individuals at all levels, hearing that feedback, and if there's things that are negative about it or really positive about it, being able to have vehicles within your organizations to be able to drive those initiatives forward and making sure that those initiatives are in line with the way that the company's going. An example of this, last year, 2014, was the first year in Mass that we didn't win Best Places to Work as an organization. And as a company, we pride ourselves on being the best places to work for. One of two things that we could have done as an organization, we could have sat there and gone, we have a couple of disgruntled employees that really made the difference between us not landing it or landing it. And that's not the core behind what makes you a best places to work. You need to understand and kind of get to the root of what those causes are and have people see that you can actually fix them, that you can make a difference, and that people feel like, to your point, like they have a voice in the organization to making it a pride in the best places to work for. So because we had great surveying, we were listening to the populations internal with Davis, we were able to get to the root of really what was a fairly minor fix in some benefits and a few other things, and just even this year we've seen those scores come back so much higher, and I feel like that survey piece is so big to be able to make sure that you're listening to your employees, and not that you're going to be able to change everything, but that at least they feel like their voice is being heard. And then the other one, another tool is making sure that you're building a performance-based culture. So if people understand what's expected of them and what they're marching towards, then they have a vehicle to get there, and you can figure out what motivates them, and they can drive towards that mission or that goalpost or the peak of the mountain. So I feel like if you don't have a great kind of visual or you're not very clear on what the overall goal of the group is or the department or the company, there's no way you can understand what motivates someone and then ask them to get there if that finish line really isn't visible.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ravi.
Juline, why don't we go with you next?
Sure. So one of the things, one of the tools is, regardless of the size of the organization, is an actual communication strategy. So one of the things that's so valuable for employees at any level is to feel that they know what decisions are being made, they feel they understand where the company is going, and what's the purpose behind some of the things that they're being asked to do. Otherwise, as you can imagine, there's a gap in the understanding of, okay, well, last week we were going in this direction, and this week we've changed our minds and we're going in a different direction. So when I say communication strategy, I mean, it's actually sitting down and putting in place from senior leadership down what that looks like. So it's almost like a tiered approach. So if we're looking at, for example, the CEO, he's communicating down to maybe his next executive level. Maybe that's the executive senior vice presidents. And their job is to then communicate down. And so it's actually putting into place who's responsible for passing the message down so it's filtering throughout the organization. And I know that some of the customers that we worked with, when they put this in place, it is invaluable, because now when there's a change happening in the organization, when they feel like they've done their due diligence in getting the message out there, they look to this strategy and say, okay, let's start from the top. And now they have a streamlined approach, and they decide also what's the best avenue to communicate the message. Is it to have, say, a town hall meeting with their employees, so that way they sit everybody down and it's a directed message? Is it that we're having different departmental meetings where, now it's being passed down that way? And to have that strategy in place, so that way it's not a guessing game for your teams and your employees of where the information is coming from and whether or not they feel that they are part of that. So when they have that communication, they feel like they're more part of the team. As Brendon pointed out, they want to be part of that team. And now they can ensure that they're getting that information that's so important to motivate them and engage them within the culture of the organization. The other thing that goes to the direct manager and supervisors, as we said, that's really important, that relationship that employees have with their direct manager. And something, if you think about it, is that typically what happens is that our employees are really good at doing their job, and then we promote them, right? And they possibly haven't had any leadership or management experience at all. And then these folks that don't have any experience in leading are now charged with, say, new employees, entry-level employees, to motivate them, and they've never been given the skills to do that. And if we look at it from the other approach, now we have our top level executives, and they're managing very seasoned people who are highly motivated. They understand what their job is, the direction, and they don't need as much supervision. They don't need as much of that day-to-day coaching, perhaps. And so one of the most invaluable tools we can do is to arm our direct supervisors who are being newly promoted into those roles with some skill development on how to lead people. Because that, if we look at that, that's a key driver in being able to continue to grow the organization and have people stay and move up in the organization, because they're being given development opportunities. And now your folks who are being led by them and need more of that time to be overseen by their manager, they're getting it in a very skilled way. So that's a really important part of the equation that we see is frequently not happening.
Thank you, Juline. Ravi, you want to?
Yeah, sure.
Your thoughts?
Thank you. Anyone HR here, human resources people? Great. See, what happens with a lot of these surveys, you go back and start looking at, a lot of times, is not only doing the soft workshops, but also how do we incentivize people, how do we motivate people for different things. I just want to give you a different picture of it. See, sometimes when I hear of tools, I feel carrot and stick method, and that doesn't work. So instead of my telling this answer, I'm going to turn around to DAVIS Company, because they're a role model. I'm going to give you a context, and I'm going to ask somebody there to tell their story for 2 minutes. So here's what happened. Some time ago, they started coming to a round table, and Peter, you'll like this story because of lean management concepts. Is we shared with them a pizza story, pizza meal. We asked them, do you want to go in a Tulsa car or do you want to go in pizza? And they chose Tulsa, but I still took them to pizza because you can deliver pizza in a Tulsa car. So Brendon and Ryan were in that round table, and we gave them a pizza story, which shows there's an investment company out of Chicago that basically takes the franchise, not the whole company, a store, and you would expect the franchise to be the best at what they do. They improve their productivity, they make them better, they make them more profitable. And one of the studies was Little Caesars Pizza Shop, in which they took franchise and they studied that it takes 15.2 miles of walk. I'm a data-driven metrics guy. Okay, I like the soft metrics, but I'm a data-driven metrics guy. They walked 15.2 miles a pizza maker in 1 week. They reduced it to 10.2 miles. Their philosophy was you couldn't be making pizza when you're walking that much extra distance. So this story was shared with these two people. And they came back, and 2 years ago, they did a rollout for all the employees using Pizza Story. Ryan, you want to share what you guys did for a minute? You engaged the entire management team, and you did the same thing this year. What did you guys do with the Pizza Story?
Yeah, actually, I want to hit two things, because there's one thing from the Dale Carnegie sessions that I think is important from engagement, and everyone's spoken to it. It's the interview. So if we can speak to that a little bit, that's something that I've taken from 5 years ago when I've done that, and that's really, and we talked about that actually in interview training as well when I went over to Cogmetics, is really getting to understand the motivators, and it's one of the hardest things to do, because it's like you can't just go, hey, can you come over here and sit down and let's talk about what motivates you? It's piecing it all together throughout the process, but understanding, your goal is to really understand how to get people motivated and how to get them engaged, and it's a process. It's not a checklist, and it's not a, hey, we're going to do this. It's really understanding their motivators, and everyone is motivated different in different industries. So using your interview was what we talked about, using the interview process to actually get some of that, and decide what you're going to first. So I don't know if you're going to, if I stole your thunder there, that's very important.
No, it's okay.
We took the pizza article. At the beginning of last year, we identified that we had a quality issue. You know, we didn't know whether it was sales weren't growing, or revenues weren't growing, or GPs weren't growing, how they needed to be growing, and came to the conclusion that really it was more of a quality thing than it was about people being engaged. It was just where everything met together and just wasn't syncing up as it should. So we use company forums where we've literally flown in almost everyone in the country to do case studies as a team and work as a team, and broke it out into several groups and gave them the case study to talk about it and to understand it, and we brought our own analytics into it, opposed to just the pizza stuff. We brought our own data to the table and had the teams actually solve some of our own internal problems. And from an engagement standpoint, it was, wow, now people believe in a world they create. So now they've helped create that world, and you know, Mark will joke that quality is my favorite 7-letter word, which was so last year. But no, now it's part of who we are, and it's how we operate. And it's not a question of, do we have to solve this problem next year? It's, that problem's been solved, and there's 75 people in the company thinking that way now, opposed to just 2 or 3 key leaders saying it.
And I would just say that we think that way now, but we communicate that way too. It's almost just as important, because we're collaborating together about the same topics, and it's like there's a common ground which everyone knows to talk about and wants to talk about. I think that's the next level to it as well.
Yeah.
Levels, so organizational culture you talked about, a way of doing business, engaging employees at all levels, data-driven, metrics-driven, and results-driven. And this has gone to the extent that they have created a bubble chart. Have you seen their TV screens? Everyone is knowing exactly where they stand today. And it's become a self-monitoring process. So as much as you would like to touch the soft metrics, you need to transfer them into hard metrics if you want to change the organizational culture. And I think they have adopted that now to the T, that every recruiter or person knows their activity versus results. Everyone knows where they stand in the marketplace. So unless you create that feedback circle and use the hard data to support the soft data, you're not going to make the change happen. And I'm suggesting them to develop that as a product and sell it to you guys. Honestly, Brendon is just fighting. But it's a great product they have developed. And I just want to give you that the engagement is now, as Mark said, Mark, would you agree that it's almost from the bottom up?
Yeah. Well, people are bringing their feedback now. They're noticing things because you have 75 people looking at the problems as opposed to just 6 or 7.
So this is just in 2 years that they have accomplished. While they were still engaged, they have taken it to the next level. So thank you.
So, a quick question. How much of the clients that you work with, you said you're big on the hard data, how much of the clients you work with that you don't see them actually working on that hard data first? Because I think what you said, both are important. You got to watch both of those. The clients, in your experience, how many are actually focused on those numbers and driving the metrics?
Most of the time when we start, they're not on hard data. They're all on soft data. But we insist on translating that into hard data, because if they don't, then all the work what you guys do will be a feel good and not in a hard data translation, right? I mean, we do the similar part at a different part of the organization. So if HR or any of these people cannot justify the investment in a soft metrics into hard metrics, the CEOs will find it difficult to understand why they're making investment. We know from our heart it is related, Ron, but I don't think that it is demonstrated other than theoretical data or historic data. What we try to do with people is translate your soft data into hard data in a real time, so it becomes a self-managing system and a self-engagement system. So over a period of 2 years, we take them there. Is it possible in the first 6 months? Answer is no.
Well, you know they want it in the first 6 months. They can't afford to wait for 2 years.
Yeah. But they start getting there.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, that's really good insight on that. So thank you, and thanks for sharing the input. Let's go to, and some of this has been answered in this question, but I will throw it out to the team and the panel right now. How can we get our managers / leadership to create a culture that motivates employees to do their best? And Ravi, can we start with you on this question?
Sure. I think one of the part that video said is purpose-driven organization. Has anyone seen Daniel Pink's? Does anyone know Daniel Pink? Yeah. Okay. I highly recommend reading his book, or there's a video called The Purpose-Driven Organization. It's a key factor from top down. We asked that question of a CEO. What's the purpose? And we had not even signed a contract. By the way, my business partner, Lynn, there. So we had not even signed the contract. And he said, do you want to ask a question? And he said, well, it's an awkward question. Can I ask you in front of your employees? Because they were executives. I said, sure. He said, what's the purpose of your company? Why do you exist? Why do you exist? You existed for the last 100 years. Why do you exist? Can you answer that question? And he gave the most passionate talk for an hour. So did Bob there. So did Bob there. And you got to respect for what they believe they exist for. And the companies that have existed over generation, like probably water corporations, etc., they really have passion for which they exist, where profit is important, but there's a purpose for profit, which is more of a reinvestment in people. If you cannot get that message from the top down, and if you cannot connect it to the employee level, you are only a profit-driven organization. And I think that's one big part that I'd suggest. The second part is, there's a beautiful article on best places to work in Harvard Business Review in January issue. And they have compared organizations that have been able to attract and retain talent. And one of the key factors they say is performance. See, if you cannot take performance and results as part of your organizational culture, those people who strive for performance will start leaving your organization, and those who will be left are non-performers. So you build up a culture which is non-performance, which is broken window concept. If you have broken a window and if you don't fix it, people say it's okay to do it. So performance is an absolute essential, hence accountability. And if the management doesn't make that as an organizational culture, your top performers will start leaving, your top talent will start leaving, and we're left with something else. Last thing, aspirations. If the organization doesn't have aspirations, we have had this, we have business roundtables, we have asked this question, and I can tell you, at least there are 40% of businesses where business owners in the room, when we ask them, what are your aspirations? The only answer is to keep the lights on and pay the bills. They don't say that. They don't say that. But growing is a risk. If that's the only aspirations the top leaders have, they're not going to attract talent. So it's not all. So if you connect those three things, purpose, accountability, and performance, and results driven, and aspiration. And last point, sorry, taking come in for. There's a confusion between family culture and performance. Loyalty is not necessarily needed to be related to performance. And sometimes there's a confusion there. But the article in Harvard Business tells that you can be a family by being strong in performance. And you got to start separating those things. So the culture part, when we talk about, we bring 4 things or 5 things. I always show 4 fingers and say 5 things, so don't mind that. It's an Indian math, okay? Number 1, adaptability. Is the organization capable of adapting? Second thing is learning organization. Are they capable of learning quickly and applying? Third thing is performance and results driven. Fourth thing is profit consciousness. Everyone at all levels should be profit consciousness. And the fifth thing is humility. Are people willing to learn by being humble? To say, I don't know the answers, but I'm willing to learn the answers. So as much as you talk about these other cultures, if you don't incorporate that, the rest of the culture doesn't keep up with it, such as collaboration, etc. So, I mean, again, engineer, hard-driven data, but these are some of the things that we feel are important to be part of the culture to drive the rest of the engagement.
Good insight. To kind of bridge the gap, I think, between that is, we have a lot of folks that communicate and speak a lot about what their personal and professional goals are inside of work. So that we can then build an equation of if you do this type of activity or you achieve these results, this is how you will get to accomplishing your personal goals. So kind of an example would be for recruitment or technology, there's controllable activities that exist on their day-to-day basis. Number of phone calls that are made, number of candidates they send out to clients, number of great conversations or meetings that they have on a week-to-week basis. Down the line, that equals deals and dollars, right? And deals and dollars equals a brand new car, or being able to go on the vacation with their family that they were never able to do previously. Moving out of their parents' home, or retiring 3 years earlier. Those are all motivations that exist personally that you can make the connection all the way back to day-to-day activities. And I think whether you're in a manufacturing environment where you're pushing folks on certain metrics or certain numbers as a group, people really need to rally behind some of that stuff and celebrate those wins, so that people aren't coming to work every day and they're lemmings. It's make 100 phone calls, then I go home, and then I come in and I make 100 phone calls, and then I go home. It's much more about the wins and achievements on a week-to-week basis, or kind of chipping away at the year, so that they're knocking off the big bucket list items that they have for that year trying to achieve. So I think that whether you're in a manufacturing environment, a staffing environment, whatever your business may be, I think you need to figure out what motivates, define the equation on how to get there, and be marching towards the overall goal, and celebrate a lot everything in between.
Thank you. Good insight. Juline?
Yeah, so and it was a perfect example that Ravi just gave for the DAVIS Companies that supports this answer, which is to have a culture where innovation is not only for senior management, that it's innovation at all levels, where being able to be a supporter of a change or be able to contribute your ideas and then see that your idea is taken somewhere and it's integrated into a decision, or that it's recognized, creates an environment where people are now more willing to come to the table and say, hey, you know what, I'm the individual contributor accountant, but I've got a great idea on how we can change our system and process so that way we can get to the result of a problem faster. And then we're willing to do that because when their idea is brought to, say, their manager or senior management, there's consideration of their idea and there's feedback. or there's action. So having a culture where we were promoting innovative thinking and creative thinking, and getting our teams together, as the example was just given here with DAVIS Companies, and saying, here's a problem that we have, let's solve this together, and be able to move that through your organization and have them be part of the decision-making process and the change process is extremely powerful in our employees feeling like they're part of something that's greater, which is what they want. They want to see, to Brendon's point, the end result of what are the tasks that I'm doing on a daily basis. And if they see that in the direction and the motivation of the company, they see that they're part of that and they're more motivated to come to the table and do that again and work harder. I mean, and what we saw in that video is that engagement is about our employees' discretionary effort, so going above and beyond, and they'll do that if they feel that that's being recognized and something is being done with that that's valuable. And the last thing is also when we have a culture that also fosters recognition of that discretionary effort, it's so powerful in showing people that it's meaningful, that it's warranted, and there's so many different ways we can recognize our team members, and so that could be from more of the formal recognition. But what we've seen in working with teams and organizations is that what has the most powerful impact is more of the informal. And so when you're working one-on-one with your manager or your team and you're getting that recognition for going above and beyond, and your manager taking the time to provide you with that feedback, on a more regular basis, has that internal motivation that we all need to be recognized, basic human behavior, right? We want to know that what we're doing is being recognized and we feel good about ourselves, then we want to repeat that behavior. So having that recognition is just an integral part of making sure that our people are saying, okay, my efforts are recognized, and I'm going to do more of this, which is what we all want.
Let's go to the last question. How should a company be branding themselves in the marketplace to ensure they're attracting the top talent? I think this is going to be a real important one for what's going on in the marketplace today, because I think there's going to be a mass exodus of people. The economy is turning around, and I think there's going to be a big wake up. So, Brendon, can we start with you on that question?
Sure. You look out there at companies. You see Google and companies that are out there where they have the keg graders in the corner and the ping pong tables and this huge shiny object that's out there. And you don't want to get caught up with so many different generations that exist in the workplace today, caught up in kind of what the core of that is. It's not the shiny object. People don't come to work because the right people don't come to work because there's a ping pong table and a keg grader in the corner. You actually get total opposite. You get folks that think that's what work's about. You need to be able to market yourself to be a winning organization. Folks are drawn to places that care about their employees, places that have strong. We talked a lot about it today. Is strong direction, strong game plans. Really a vision to where the company's going and a really good quality statement behind it. So I think that from my perspective, if your organization is more focused on the quality that exists within the organization and the really trying to look at the employee welfare and looking at kind of the direction of the company, and you can celebrate the big wins. That's kind of what a company should be marketing. I think that today, with the amount of social media that's out there, it's really, really easy to celebrate your organizations and the strength that your organizations bring to the marketplace. And I think that you really need to make sure that not only externally you're, types of awards that you're winning, or just big wins, whether it's you're able to have a banner in fourth quarter and to be able to push that out, but also internally be able to market those successes so that your internal employees see the kind of the winning mentality that we talked about earlier, that they're part of the winning team.
Really want to go down the line.
Sure, yeah, and so to Brendon's point is that there's so many ways in which the message is getting out to the marketplace about our organization. I mean, if somebody is thinking about applying for a job at a company, what do? They go on Glassdoor, right? They go online, they look at the ratings of the company, they take a look at what people are saying about working there. And so one of the things that we find is really important is, when you think about, your employee value proposition almost, right? So what are your employees saying internally? I mean, when they leave work every day, they're going home with their families, their friends, all the people that they're talking to. What are they saying about the experience of working in your organization? What are they saying about, is it a winning team? What's the message that they're putting out there? And so I'll use this example because I think it's an example we can all relate to. I mean, I'm sure everybody in this room has either used an Apple product or has gone into an Apple store, right? And what is Apple's slogan? Think different, right? And that's what all of their products do. And also from a hiring mentality, that's what they do as well. All of their employees, they're not technology people. They don't have all backgrounds in technology. They don't. There are people who are from all different walks of life. They try to hire people who have very eclectic backgrounds. They figure, I can teach them a technology piece, but they want to make sure that it is resonating with their brand, which is think different. So when you go into an Apple store, you see a lot of different kinds of people who are working there. So you want to ensure that when you're thinking about, there's actually a system and a way to develop an employee value proposition. So that way the message that is being spoken in your organization is the message now that your employees are taking when they go out and they leave work. And it's a matter of, one of the things that we suggest is sitting down with your employees and asking them, I mean, a simple question. I did this exercise a number of weeks ago, which is, why do you work here? Why do you like working here? And you see the multitude of responses that you get. And from an organizational perspective, that's a good thing, but you also want to streamline that. So that, what does that look like when all those people are walking out the door? So being able to ensure that that message also includes the values of your organization, what you stand for, and what's going to attract people to say, hey, you know what? That's really cool that you work there. I want to come and work there too. And I'll go back to the Apple example because for any open position in Apple, it's harder to get a job in an Apple retail store than it is to get into Harvard University. Okay, so that just tells you that the folks that are going out there and talking about their experience of working there in a retail environment is a message that the organization has streamlined, so that way it incorporates their values, it also incorporates the work environment, and also incorporates the type of culture that they are living and working in every day. So we want to ensure as organizations that we're developing that message, we're talking to our employees about it, and we're creating that environment so that way we are able to attract the people that are most resonate with the organization that we are and that are going to be the best fit so that we can really retain those people as well.
I'd just like to add one other thing to that. This topic really focuses in on user experience, right? So user experience, the user could be the 20-year-old employee, could be a 15-year-old employee, could be a brand new person coming through the interview process, or someone that's just on your website, right? So that user experience and the folks in your organization, every single individual that exists within that is a salesperson for your company and markets your company in a good, bad, or indifferent way. So, to Juline's point that you need to have such a clear message and make sure that you're looking under all the different processes of attraction, talent, whether it be the senior level or a brand new person coming in the door. You need to make sure that all those line up together and that the user experience is a great one and is exceptional if you want to get the exceptional talent in the door. We see this a lot with organizations, the interview process. Coming into an organization can turn someone off, a really good person off, just like that, just because someone didn't handle something the right way, or someone had a bad day, or got caught in traffic and just was late to show up. There's certain things about your experience as an organization that you need to stop and make sure you're analyzing all the different sections so that your marketing army is every single facet of your company, every single person in your company. So that sounds really daunting, right? But if the message is clear all the way around and you make sure that all the different folks that are part of your organization understand that and can build out the different facets, that's where you're going to create an organization that's going to be hell on wheels. It's going to be attracting people at all different levels, and you'll really be able to grow.
Ravi, the Brandon question.
Yeah, the interesting part about this is the video, it showed 3 different generations or 4 different generations working at the same time. And a lot of us are worried about the Y generation because these people have this notion that they want gratification, instant gratification, they want immediate, lot more money, they're entitled, that kind of feeling. And I'm a coach, so instead of giving an answer, I give you a question or I give you a story. And Brian hates it and Brendon hates it because I don't give an answer. They normally hate me for that, but they get the answer, right? So I have 2 daughters. They're both millennials, 28 years and a 32-year-old. So the 28-year-old is graduate from Carnegie Mellon engineer, working. They're both in DC. The 32-year-old, she changed 3 jobs. All were forced onto her because the company was going to have major layoffs. She's connected. So what kind of respect she would have? And she was with Johnson & Johnson, GSK, you name half of the companies. No fault of hers. But GSK had the Avandia situation, so she exited. Okay? So she has very little respect for corporate culture. Period. But at this point, she's taking a cut in pay. She's about to graduate in her law by working full-time from George Mason. So she took $120,000 salary and went to $46,000 internship. Left the job and joined internship. Why did she do that? Pardon me?
To better herself later on, to have more experience, to move into a different direction maybe?
I think being happy and a self-respect of working towards something that you feel good at doing is a huge motivator instead of money.
That is true. She answered. She felt better in that job than she ever felt with all the companies she worked, ever. But right now, she's working for FDA with 0 pay. So somebody goes from 120,000 to 0 pay. So whenever you say, I want to give them incentive and money, I just want you to think about it. She's creating value for herself by going to FDA because FDA's experience is going to create her market value that is much higher than 150,000 you can think about with the relationship. So these people are looking for career advancement in a right manner. Can you provide that? Can you provide that platform? If you want them to stay with you, if you want to engage with them, and at some point they may leave. But are you in a position to even engage them in that manner to create that value for them? They're looking for it. My second daughter, she started with Xerox. They gave her the best, with Portland. They gave her the highest salary, highest incentive they gave, and she left them. And Xerox themselves said, we knew you, we couldn't hold you back. She joined British Petroleum, which was already in trouble. And I asked her why. She said it was for their green initiative. They had an environmental thing because of the disaster they had, and she believed in that passion. Well, because of the financial circumstances, again, they were going to give layoffs. She exited before the layoff. But she believed, knowing that in the financial crisis, she joined the green initiative at a company for that purpose, purpose-driven. She exits that company and now works for Deloitte and is doing her MBA with Georgetown. People are looking for career opportunities. Does your company give that? Is your company associated with holding on to the people for the sake of retention, or are they really giving them that feeling that you can be who you can be and will always support you in the process? Hold on to it. So, off the subject for 2 minutes, for 1 second, not 1 second, 1 minute, is everyone in their heart have to have a role model. My daughters do. I do. So when I started my career here, I had 4 role models in my life. One, Napoleon Hill. Anyone heard? That's too old for a lot of people. Napoleon, Think and Grow Rich. Anyone heard that?
Yes.
Philosophically, personal philosophy, great thing. Would you agree? The second one is Dale Carnegie, People Issues. I read as many books and as many things I can do. These guys are doing a great job. When it comes to his way of dealing with people or his philosophies, they're one of the best. Third one is Peter Drucker, for business philosophies. You want to think about business philosophies? Peter Drucker. He put his life into it. And the last one is Zig Ziglar for presentation. His style of presentation. Those are my role models. These people are my role models in that sense. So when you're building your careers, when you're building your organizational culture, think about something that you can role model after. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Whether it's personally or professionally or organized. And you can position yourself as a very special brand in the market.
Okay, right. Thank you. Okay, so let's do this now. Let's small tables come up with a couple key questions you want to ask the panel today and get some information that you can walk away with, something that's on your mind, that you've been thinking about. No holding you back. You must be an overachiever, right? Here we go. All right, go ahead, Eric.
So you said. I work in a professional services environment, so everything is utilization. Okay, so plus we do not have, for the first, say, 6 years of your life in the organization, we hire 15, 20 new students out of college. You don't have a direct manager. So how would you build engagement when you have a utilization pool for managing?
I can
Sure.
speak to this because I have a customer who's in that same professional services firm, exactly the same position. And about 2 years ago, what they decided to do is because one of the problems that they were having is because of their model, they were not retaining some of the people that they wanted to retain. So they developed a mentorship program, and what they did was they created this mentorship program. One of the things that they did, and I believe the mentorship program is the first 2 years that these new hires are coming into the organization, they have in their organization, it's a partner who is their mentor. And the way that they conduct it is that they have the mentor do coaching groups with each partner has 4 to 5 new hires or younger folks in the organization, and they have a set time each and every week that they're working with these new hires in this mentorship capacity, and then every other week they're meeting individually with each of these folks to talk specifically about everything from their career direction to some of their motivations to even down to the daily tasks of their job. And one of the things that they found in the past 2 years is that their retention is improved, but one of the things that they've seen that's been even more valuable is also the dynamics that's created more in the different levels of the organization, that there is a more team-oriented culture, it's more inclusive, whereas before they felt it was very separate. And now with also these groups, they found that these mentees who are now working in the same group really see each other as their team members and work very closely together, and they've created a learning environment of their own. So in that particular example, we've seen that with that organization, that has really worked for them, even in the utilization environment where every hour counts, right? And so they typically do these coaching groups early in the morning, so that way everybody still has their work time to get everything done, and the one-on-one meetings are typically over lunch, and they found that it's been successful for them.
How much turnover is in that group typically? Like, how often does that turnover?
In what time frame?
I guess I'll ask you the question. In what time frame do you have folks turn over? If there's
We'll probably retain 20% over 6 years.
okay, got it.
Yeah,
So I guess
I mean that's good.
okay, got it.
That's good, and it's not that they want to leave, because we're best places of workplace for like the last 4 out of 5 years at BBJ. I'm not here because we're not doing things. I'm here because we want to do more.
Right, yeah.
We analyze our results from that survey all the time. The question is you have to be careful about, what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. Just because someone we're now in like this employer of choice concept, where I think we're pushing too far on the other side, where you're saying you're going to basically. I'm reading a book on employee engagement as well. It's by Wiley, but it's really well documented, and it says you don't want satisfied employees, you want engaged employees. I think we're starting to satisfy our employees.
Yeah.
Sated is not driven, right? And so I'm trying to figure out what happens is once you hit that 6-year mark, the business has to grow substantially to open up another manager position. So I have a farm league and I have the major. And not every year do we have position open. So they're starting to figure out, okay, if I'm 2 back from that threshold and they just promoted 2 people last year, there's not going to be any jobs, right? So they'll jettison early. So it's very much a part of the utilization. Every hour, I'm like, looking at you said, well, they meet every week. I'm like, it has to be early morning or else a partner's not going to give up that time, right? Because that time is $1. So when you talk about your culture, you can mask a lot of things. We do a lot of great things, and we definitely invest in our people, career-wise. But if, they're starting to realize there's like 2 career paths. There's one, and I feel like it's, you're spinning a wheel if you're that. The tumblers have to align. Not only do you have to be ready for the job, there has to be a slot available, right? And that may not be every year. So we lose. I create better talent and throw it into the marketplace, right? Then I keep.
And are they going to your competitors?
Well, we're a 100-year-old company, so what we've done historically is place them at our customers. So that's a benefit. That's a good idea for anybody who wants to,
Which is a trend now. A lot of times, well-trained people are stolen by the customers.
Yeah, I mean,
we do the work.
I wish I could get the ROI back on the training investment from my customers by selling them for recruitment. But that's my issue is I'm finding that we had a great exodus this year. And that's what started me thinking about engaging, or how engaged are. I mean, discretionary effort, as we were talking about BPJ, we do all of that. I still would see we have a massive amount of discretionary effort that could be tapped, but it's not being. I mean, I don't know, how much discretionary effort do you think you get back from your employees? I guess I'd throw that back.
Yeah, I mean,
as a percentage of total, you don't really have a number. It's not a hard metric. I'm just saying, what do you think?
I think, like, speaking for our organization, we have a thing we call happy turnover, right? So, it's something that, day one, when we're talking to folks, if they're not engaged and they don't see the opportunity, I will help them find another job elsewhere, and I will be the #1 reference for them. So I think that you have to kind of build a culture behind that, and also, one of the things that we partner with too is PI tools. So the ingredients that you're working with on the person coming in to the organization are really, really important. And that's not the end-all be-all. It's not like, okay, well, if you don't match up directly with this, it's a good, thermometer on, do I have the right ingredients of somebody that I can build up to that? And I think in the organization, using, to Juline's point, mentorship opportunities, we do it internal. What is the best way to build that next layer of experience is having them manage junior folks and having, it's not like they just step into a management role, they're a mentor. They're a mentor that they're in the early mornings or late afternoons, they're going through to help individuals get to where they need to be. And, I feel like, it's not going to be one thing that fixes that problem, but if you have a really good farm league for people coming up, managers coming in, and I don't know what it takes to open up that spot, but that sounds like something that I would focus in on. And what's the key ingredient for making that spot open up, and how can I align these mentors to get as much experience and leadership as possible to accelerate those spots opening up further. So it seems like if you can get a mix of all of those things going through, and I don't know enough about the business about what opens up a spot necessarily, but I feel like
It's a revenue number. It's
Sure.
a practice. It's a practice size.
Yeah.
That's a tough thing about. I mean, I've worked in software. I've worked in a lot of different industries. I've worked in academia. The toughest thing is a professional services environment. I mean, billable hours is rules the roost. And that's how you make money. And we understand the connection. We have a good incentive comp plan that I designed to pay for that, some of that discretionary effort. But
Can I just add one? I know you want to give other people a
Sure,
chance to talk.
yeah,
But
I'm sorry.
Just adding the last part to it is part of business strategy rather than just a people strategy.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just gave you an example of a CEO of a 100-year-old company. This was the same situation. People were not rising because family hierarchy. People were not rising too much, and hence the retention was a kind of issue of attracting talent. And it became part of their business strategy to create exactly what Brendon is saying in a creative way, and they have given 30 promotions, 30 growth opportunities within the organization. So it's part of the business strategy. Because of confidentiality, I cannot talk about it.
sure.
But it is part of the business strategy to open exactly what Brendon said. And if you can do that, you will have, and it's still the structure of revenue doesn't change, but you can do that, you'll be successful much better. That's where I want to leave that. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Next question, please.
Good question. So, a couple good tools or ways to measure employee engagement. Maybe not on the corporate level, this is a large corporation, but maybe on a smaller level, maybe like 200 people in like the manufacturing operations, or 20 people in a specific department. What are a couple real good tools to measure employee engagement?
So I don't know if the larger company does an employee engagement survey for the whole company, but one of the things that we recommend also is there's so many different names for them, but kind of temperature surveys. And so it could be for a specific part of the business, a specific a specific department, and you can just gauge the engagement of that particular workforce. They won't be representative, obviously, of the whole organization, but you can really get a good temperature on just the department that you're looking at. And then, as leadership of that specific team, then you can take those results, and now just departmentally you can look at it from that survey. And there are a couple things, which is what we have found is that to do with our customers is that to do an employee engagement survey internally can be challenging, because you may not get the answers and the results that you're looking for, because there might be apprehension on the minds of your employees as to who's going to look at this and they know who I am. They're going to go through these answers. They're going to figure out, hey, that's Joe and that's Sam, as opposed to perhaps an external provider who can then, have that confidentiality to do a survey for you, and also could be tailored to your specific business and your specific business unit and some of the things that you really want to look at. And then they'd be able to take those results and really help for you to look at what are some of the things that might be the low-hanging fruit that you can work on pretty immediately. But I would suggest doing one of those temperature surveys just for your department.
Can I just comment on that?
Sure.
Because I think that's an interesting, that's a good strategy. I think that if they don't trust the data, or they don't trust what's motivating the survey,
Right.
maybe that problem's first.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the first thing that I'd probably want to kind of go after, and just try to understand how it's beneficial for the organization, both them individually and the company, the group. I mean, Waters is a huge company, but if you break it down into group size, it's I think it's no different than the rest of us with that regard, especially when you're coming to work every day. So,
To add to what, if anyone knows a word called gamification of skills,
Yeah.
gamification? We went for a conference in Anaheim, California, where we were one of the presenters, and the conference name is e-learning. And a lot of companies have now created tools to engage employees in a game format. Not expensive. It's a great stuff,
Yeah.
and you would think, but it also gives you performance and it gives you metrics right away. And I think it's important for you to think about these online tools because these are, for a small group, it could be as small as 20 people, it could be as large as 100 people. And they have given a correlation between different people, even remotely connected into this game, that is strategic game or operational game, basically related to your issue, and basically it leads to a total engagement and a net result. So do some research on gamification of
Yeah, there's actually a conference coming up on it. It's specifically for HR professionals. I want to say it may be coming up fairly soon, in the spring.
What's it called again?
It's gamification. Gamification. And there was an organization up in Canada that actually did this process. I want to say they had like 15,000 employees. So they had quite a number of employees, but they noticed that their employee engagement was around 50%. And once they brought this specific process in, it went up to 87%.
Sometimes even just by knowing, people knowing, wow, only 50% of us are engaged.
Yeah.
Maybe I can dig in a little bit more. Maybe that's just inspiring in itself, just to know.
Exactly. I think that's what you were kind of saying, that's a temperature gauge right off, and people are a little bit leery about taking the assessments internally, then that's telling you something about the engagement of the organization, that there's
So
something.
these tools are readily available, right?
But I don't think it has to necessarily be about the technology piece. Gamification is an idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Ravi talked about internally here, we have TVs that look at all the different offices, and it has real-time numbers and statistics find who's has the highest GP right now and who's on the leaderboard for the most fills for the week, or just real-time data that puts people in a race against one another. That doesn't have to be technology driven. That can be down to a manufacturing unit that exists within a manufacturing company that there's trends that go through all the different groups. What's a general trend in manufacturing that you guys all adhere to? Is it a quality number, a defect number? Is it whatever it may be? You can look at that as what's an equalizer for all the different groups that exist within a much smaller subset of a big organization, and how can you rally behind it to compete against somebody else or against another group? You could see kind of, you don't need to have all this. And I'm not saying technology's great, let's do that, but I think even kind of walking back to your companies and going, well, I don't have the ability to go to e-learning and get that tool. That doesn't stop you from all coming together as a group and saying, you know what, we want to come in at 95% non-defect rate or whatever it is that's specific to you and compete against other groups or whatever it may be. I think kind of sitting and one of the things that I would say, just because we know water's pretty in depth, is you have these subsets, and same thing with cosmetics and Coughlin too. You have these subgroups that work really well together. You guys communicate on different levels and with different groups on a day-to-day basis. So kind of building some team mentalities and being able to kind of low-tech gamify, I guess, would be a good way to put it. It doesn't necessarily mean you need some big, huge computer program to put that together. That could be very, very basic.
So my problem that I have is bridging that gap between the Gen Y and baby boomers, because we are more technologically advanced. Everything that we're doing now is in the cloud.
Yep.
We're using our cell phones to laser point and to put on presentations instead of handing out paper, because being green, we want to save more trees, and this is the way to do it. So, any ideas on how to get some of the baby boomers are scared to death of the technology because you've got the Gen Yers so best on it. How to bridge that gap? Besides mentoring.
I would actually, what is something, and this is something that's flipping back right now really hard from a sales perspective. There's one thing that the baby boomer generation has such an advantage over Gen Y. You know what that is?
Communication.
Our ability to communicate.
Communication, networking, the ability to sit down and
have a conversation.
Have a conversation with you, to be able to kind of go, all right, all this data, right? What does it mean, right? And how do I interact? So, you know, there's a lot of talk that comes down to like, well, how do I manage it differently? It's not. It's how do we use both to train each other, right? And be able to get that and see what the other one brings. So I think that, you know, even in organizations and others that we've seen, you know, the folks that do it well is they're combining the two together. They're making both generations experts in it and creating an environment to be able to have kind of a co-learning happen so that you're getting the best of both worlds, and it's not one person's job to train 50 people how to go to a networking event. It's you got 25 people that are really good at it that just need to cross-train the other 25.
So what do you have as a suggestion? That's what I meant by bridging that gap. Do you have something tangible that I could like put in place?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not just like a mentoring, here's how you do it, here's how you should do it.
I think you got to look at your business. So, you know, I think that when we're talking, and I'm just trying to think about kind of technology versus being able to work remotely, right? Being able to work remotely, we have a lot of folks that are coming, you know, Gen Y millennials that they understand how to do it. It's easy. Like there's no difference whether I'm in the office or I'm at home. I can get the same sort of thing done. Whereas you know the baby boomer generation, it's like I need to drive to work so that I can get my work done and do it well. I think that you know being able to understand and even having not coaching sessions but group roundtables to kind of discuss basic stuff that goes on in your work environment on a day-to-day basis and how different people do different things. Those things exist every single day, you know, and you have two people that are doing it very differently. You just have to create an environment where you can share some ideas together and, you know, hopefully they adopt those different things. So I guess not understanding your business, you know, in depth to kind of go, well, I would just look at your day-to-day operations and go, where are the big differences and how can I create an environment to get folks talking about how they run their day-to-day, and just take the best of both and hopefully they can adopt it from one another.
My IT department throws me under the bus with this because we have a way to communicate called Lync, L-Y-N-C. It's a Microsoft product. And so they've been rolling it out to everybody else and they'll say, well, even Nancy uses it. Yeah. So but that's their way, I guess, of saying, well, she can do it, you can do it.
Does anybody else have examples of that where things in their organization?
I just wanted to say, like, I think some of the old school tools are, you can't lose those. You know, we do daily stand-up meetings, you know, short meetings, could be 5, 10, 15 minutes, kind of just cover the basic stuff. Use visuals that are kind of painful or that are actually colored, they're printed out. You know, we're not trying to kill trees, but like it's there. It's not buried in 100 emails and 100 presentations. I can't even find that file anymore. It's like, wow, it's right there. Just sit down at the round table and have a brainstorming session, you know, and write it on the board. And people look, wow, yeah, you know, and try to follow up on it, but get all those different people talking. So I'm not leaning towards like the baby boomer side and saying, no, don't go to technology, but I think some of those things we can't lose.
Communication. People communicate differently, and I think in talking, you gotta figure it out.
I mean, we're inundated with so much technology. I mean, that's there, that's real. So it's coming. So if we grab and hold on to some of those things that were there before, you don't lose them, I think that would kind of help.
Well, I think prime example too is, you know, thinking, pondering on it a little more, is that commercial for Facebook, I unfriend you. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking at the cloud, my phone pops, it's like, yeah. You know, that's not how any of this works. It's brilliant, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, social media has actually made us communicate less.
Yes.
Which is odd. But think about it.
Exactly, it's an oxymoron. Social media and nobody's talking, but everybody's talking.
Right.
Stand up and go walk to somebody and have a conversation. If
Right.
you're so tired of
Right.
email, and it's, you know, use
Exactly.
it, it's quick and it's a sentence, go have the conversation. And
I
it's
know they
amazing
ring up
what
and
a
pick up
tool
the phone and say,
can-
hey, you got a minute?
So one of the things I did with an organization is that we set up a buddy system. We literally linked someone with a lot of experience and wisdom, not very technically savvy, with a newbie who didn't expect that, you know, should be more than 10 seconds before they got a response to something. And they developed a little bit of a relationship so that it wasn't dependent on a group coming together with information, but they developed a relationship. And the challenge was helping the more senior person not think they were the parent, and
That
the
is
younger
the challenge.
person not getting pissed off.
Exactly.
Being told something. But
Exactly.
it worked. It worked in some places. And the younger, newer employee came to appreciate that there was sophistication and savvy that they just didn't have because they hadn't been alive long enough. And they started to listen. And the older person or the more experienced person wasn't as embarrassed about their lack of knowledge. So that's just another aspect.
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah.
My mind is going a mile a minute. I'm in manufacturing, so I'm middle management, and I have the hourly employees, 35 of them below me, and I'm also involved with the senior management. So as you guys talk about like engagement in your employees, how do I handle it when I'm trying to engage my employees who are all middle baby boomers and Gen Y? And I laugh at you because the only way they talk to me is if I walk by them on the floor. Like they won't tell me that they have shortages. They won't tell me anything. But our upper management is pretty broken. So we were recently purchased by a company overseas. So at midnight they're telling us what to do. And then in the morning you come in and you're waking up to all these emails and you don't know what direction to go in. And you're trying to communicate that with your team. And you talked about earlier, like making sure that every day they know why you made a decision. I don't even know why I made a decision. I just know that somebody became a priority. So I don't know how, it's almost like I take 2 steps forward and then 10 steps back. And so kind of trying to figure out, I would love to have the 3 of you come to my work.
My question is, why are you still working there?
I don't, it's a long drive in the snow.
There's a couple more minutes here, we can figure it out.
Take a shot at that for a minute.
Let me introduce you
If
to
you're
Waters.
sitting in a police
I met Godin, so I used to work for IDEX.
So, a couple of things that I want to, I'm coming purely from coaching angle, okay? And we just came back from a whole women's organization with athletic directors of Division 1, Division 2. And they asked me one question, Lynn and I were there in Kansas City, and they asked one question that, tell us 2 or 3 qualities that people have to develop as leaders. And I'm looking at you as a leader, not at them as a leader, okay? And I said, number 1 is courage. And so if you don't have a courage, you can't be a leader in true sense. And let me define that courage part in a different way. Courage is not being reactive. Courage is being proactive in taking action in a timely manner. But a lot of people don't do it for multiple reasons. You're in the middle, so job security could be one of them. But it's also other things, being liked, want to be liked. You know, there's so many emotions that go behind courage to even express themselves. Part of the courage is also having the skills and knowledge how to do it. And I think that's where some of the fine line is. You know, the courage is not that you don't want to do it. It's one part is I want to be liked. If I said something, how will I hurt somebody? And the other part is, well, if I said it in this way, how will that come back to me? So having that particular skill at your level will help you communicate what is dysfunctionality at the top and help them understand, because you can't, sometimes you could use outside, but ultimately you'll have to develop that skill. Now, that's why I went right to the beginning. Dysfunctionality at the top level is very common. Contrary to the belief, it's very common. So when we asked in an executive conference that we presented, is what's the role of executive team versus middle and front managers, and a lot of you are HR, and there are a lot of top people, including the CEO of Mattel, was in our conference as a listener. And our question, CEO of Mattel, our question was, what is the role of executive team in this interaction and vision? What is the role of middle managers and the other people? Their execution. And one of the person commented, so our question was, how much do you invest on the top executives? Very little. How much do you invest on making the things work better? A lot of money. So great execution with poor direction takes the organization to that bad place much more quicker and more efficiently. That was a comment in the conference. Who can stop that? You have power to stop it, if you wish to stop it. So you will have to develop those skills to have that communication. We get people in our roundtables who are exactly at the same spot, men or women, it doesn't matter. And how do you build that skill and courage to be able to say to the top and set those boundaries? Is this action is going to create this. If that's how still you want me to do it, it's going to have these implications. Can you step back and think about it? And a lot of people don't have that courage. I'm putting it back on you, not on them, but I think you can do it. But that's exactly the question that we're asking. You cannot help both sides unless you can help yourself.
I think one of the things that I think, and I'm just even internally to us and stuff like that, is building a peer coalition around you. So folks that are, in different departments that are at a similar level, and although you might have, changes or dysfunction, I've never been in the environment that you've been in. So, but I know that having folks that feel like they're in a mission together, right, and even carry that further into your team. If your team is bought into you as an individual and into the mission that you're setting forth for them, then you can accomplish so much more, as opposed to all you right now are is just a conduit of information that's going out to the team. You're cracking a whip and they're doing it. Versus,
I don't feel it's that bad.
yeah, but I'm exaggerating.
I don't think they look at me like that. I don't think
Sure.
my team does. I think they are happy with me doing the work, and I haven't heard otherwise. But it just, for me, it feels like a tug of war.
But I think that
direction changing
Yes.
every minute. That's what
And
I'm hearing.
I try to prevent that from happening to getting to the floor level.
Yeah.
But it's exhausting. It's exhausting because you're thinking every day more than I should be thinking, I guess. So I'm torn a little bit.
I guess having more folks that, if they're experiencing similar stuff
Yes.
with upper management, where there's shared sentiment in some of the things that you're talking about, kind of getting together and building a coalition behind how to deal with those issues, or to be able to make a change or not make a change, whatever it may be. At least you have other people that are on the ship with you, that are all working together, and they know similar problems and stuff like that. At least you don't feel necessarily alone in the battle.
How about one final question? When you ask that question, it means no one has any more questions. Have you noticed that? Can we just do this just quick couple words of summary, key points to leave with the group today?
Yep, I think, for me, really getting to understand your employees, getting to understand what makes them tick, makes all the difference behind driving them in a particular direction, and making sure that it's not only you, it's not get behind me, it's, let's all tackle this thing together, whether it be the problem, pushing towards a goal, whatever it may be. I think really understanding your employees and on top of that, making sure that they understand what motivates you and what your goals are. So that's something that I don't think we talked about a little bit that's really, really important. When I first started working with Ravi and Lynn, they were talking to me a lot about what my goals were and stuff like that. And my next question to them was, what are your goals for the year? Like, what are...
He did. He asked me in the first meeting. And what happened?
You gave it to me. You had it written down like in a book that he popped out, like he knew I was going to ask the question. But I think there's something important about that, because there's buy-in and kind of a sobering moment that happens there, that all of a sudden you're as equal to them as anything else. Your goals might be different, but at least they're sharing in the fact that you have goals too. And you know, you sharing that with them and them sharing that with you has a pretty big personal impact. You don't have to like everyone you work with, but you know, if you're all sharing goals together, moving in a direction, I think that speaks to you know, really make a big difference. So,
Just a couple words.
Yeah, I would say differentiate and focus on what's the difference in your organization between employee satisfaction and employee engagement, because they are very different. And traditionally, we focus on satisfaction. And when we move away from satisfaction, that's when we really can figure out culturally what's going to impact the business. And that's engagement, not satisfaction.
So just a few words, that's it. Commitment from the top. If you really want to do something, commitment from the top. Remember the courage. If you're the monkey in the middle, have the courage. If you cannot have that courage, you cannot make any change happen. So that's it.
Okay, we'll give him a round of applause.